I'm with Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy, and we represent the Duchenne and Becker community. And if you attended last night's movie, you had an opportunity to be introduced to our community because it featured a wonderful young man named Dusty who has Duchenne, and the panel featured a man named Brett who has Becker. So that's our community. But what's happening today here is incredibly powerful because we're here not just to represent our own communities, we're really here coming together as a very powerful rare disease community to take these joint issues to the Hill and make a mark. And it's also Super Tuesday, as many of you know. And so we're here as the rare disease community and putting aside a lot of issues, and we like to say in our office, whether you feel the burn or you're here to make America great again, what we're really here to do is put rare disease on the map, which is, right? Which is going to be very refreshing to the offices that you're visiting tomorrow. And we also want to make sure that we're thanking these congressional members who are standing up for us and recognize our needs already, and that the ones who've never heard of us before begin to get it. Because after all, I don't think any of us have heard any of the candidates running for anything talk about disability issues or rare diseases at all in the campaigns. And I think we strive for that someday, that those issues are actually discussed publicly. So let's make sure we thank the people who already get us when we're in those offices. So I want to talk a little bit about the Patient-Focused Impact Assessment Act, and many of you have already been supporting this bill. And the timing for this meeting and you going to the Hill tomorrow is really important to this bill. So what this is it was a provision that we initially introduced in the 21st Century Cures Act, which you already heard Max talk about. And we were told that this bill that we introduced initially as provision heavily influenced the patient-focused drug development provision, or PFDD, in the House version of the 21st Century Cures Act, which we were very pleased with, but it didn't encompass everything we really wanted out of PFIA. So as the 21st Century Cures Act moved over to the Senate and became the innovation package or the innovation effort, we introduced it as a standalone bill in the Senate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in it and how that approach has worked.
Annie, if I could just say, page 35 and that part of the book is where each of these bills has a quick summary and what our ask is.
Okay.
So you don't have to write all this down.
No, and I'll summarize also for you, but thank you. Okay. So just a little bit about what PFIA is. So you already heard this morning Eric talking about FIDASIA. So if you'll recall, under FIDASIA, there were a number of provisions in FIDASIA that we as a community thought were incredibly important, and those included accelerated approval expansion, breakthrough therapy designations, and then this concept of patient-focused drug development. And we really embraced the possibility for the patient community to work with regulators to create tools that would really create this superhighway, if you would, for our innovators to come in and develop therapies that could have a real life-sustaining, life-extending impact for our community. And so that's what we, as a community, our Duchenne community and PPMD, really work to do. So since then, since FIDASIA in 2012 and the PDUFA reauthorization, this is a little bit of what we as a community have done, and we know that a lot of people in this room have done similar things. We published a white paper called Putting Patients First that really looked at PDUFA through the lens of our community. We conducted and published benefit risk studies or patient preference studies that really quantitated those trade-offs that we know our community members would be willing to take when considering what therapies, what clinical trials to undergo. We actually, as a community, wrote draft guidance for industry, provided it to the FDA, and the FDA opened a docket, accepted it to the docket, and within 12 months issued industry draft guidance back to industry. And that was for the first time in history that it ever happened. We have a registry called Duchenne Connect. It's a PPRN, a part of the PCORNet network, which we know a number of you also have. We're expanding that. And we've had very heavy engagement within this 21st Century Cures framework. But we're looking at all of these tools that we've created, all of the investments that we've made, and we're still not sure what regulatory impact this is actually going to have at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, that's what all of this is about, right? We want to know that what we've done isn't just to inform protocol design within clinical trials, which is important, but we also want to know that these tools are going to be really useful to regulators when they're actually considering products that are going before the FDA. So that's why we worked with our champions on the Patient-Focused Impact Assessment Act, because we want to make sure that all of these tools that have been created under PFDD actually have the regulatory impact that they were intended to. So everything that I'm going to talk about going forward are contained on the one-pagers that you'll have, the leave-behinds that you'll have in your packets, and I'm going to summarize it in the ask that you'll have. But that's what the spirit of this is. We want to make sure that PFDD gets pulled through the continuum of the regulatory process. So this provision is really what we consider a feedback loop between regulators and the community and industry so that we understand what's going into a regulatory review. So what essentially we're asking for is a physical checklist that a product reviewer completes at the time of a product review at the FDA, and that they literally check yes, no, not applicable when a review is completed to say whether or not these tools were utilized at the time of a review, and that they just go down the list. And not applicable could be because the tool doesn't exist, because they didn't feel that it was valid, that it wasn't relevant to this particular product review, and that checklist then be published at the time that the product review is made public, and then at the end of the year, that all of these checklists are published in aggregate across all of the divisions. We're just looking for a little more transparency and this feedback loop. So here's a list again of the possible PFDD tools that could be included in that checklist, and this list is pulled from PDUFA. So this isn't something that we just created. And we have a lot of support from a lot of partners. So again, this isn't disease specific. This would apply to any condition that was being reviewed for any product and for which there had been PFDD tools created. If you are represent an organization in this room and you're not on this list, we would love to add you to this list. And my email is at the end of this, and you can jot it down and email me. And we would love to add you to this list. The timing of this meeting is really important. So while we don't officially yet know whether we are in the March 9th markup that Max was talking about, we did receive a discussion draft from the Senate Help Committee on Friday, which means that the committee is marking up our bill, looking at it with our sponsors and creating some revisions. And so there's a lot of momentum right now. Our community, the Duchenne community, was on the Hill last week for the fly-in and spent a lot of time meeting with people about this bill, and you'll be here tomorrow doing the same. So if we have a nice wave of support at the same time that the committee's looking at the bill, we could potentially have this move through, but we get one more shot on goal, as Max said. Again, around this, we've had a number of congressional briefings. We had 3 briefings where this bill was included in 2015. These are our lead sponsors, so it's been sponsored by Senator Wicker and Senator Klobuchar, and as you know, Senator Klobuchar is the lead of our Rare Disease Caucus on the Senate. And then we had original co-sponsors who came on and supported the bill at the same time the bill was dropped, and they're Michael Bennett, Susan Collins, Al Franken, and Johnny Isaacson, and last week we picked up a few additional sponsors. So the ask for this bill is to please co-sponsor S1597 PFIA so that we can ensure that the tools being created under FDASIA's Patient-Focused Drug Development, or PFDD, make the regulatory impact that they were intended to. Thank you.